Hello, everybody, and welcome to another iconic episode of A Good Lawyer podcast. I am Esteban, Stephen Garcia, your non-lawyer, coast-to-coast opinion host. And this is where I delve into the captivating world of brilliant legal minds, such as with our guest today, all brought to you by the EIL Network. Excellence in Lawyering. Let the healing begin. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a return guest. We're going to call this one Chapter 2 because we had such an amazing, really insightful conversation with this gentleman. They don't make him any better than him, that's for sure. So we want to dive into all of that. We're going to be combining a lot of the conversation from the first go around, but today is going to be referred to as Chapter 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please welcome back to the podcast, David Farias. David, welcome to A Good Lawyer. Welcome back to A Good Lawyer podcast.
Good afternoon, and I sincerely appreciate the invitation to come back and have the opportunity to chat with you a little bit more and share some more about me with your audience. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All day, every day, we'd love to have you on. Uh, so last time when we spoke, we talked about your upbringing, the early years, the formulative years, I guess, right? We can call that. But also, on our last conversation, you had barely got the name up on the door, correct, of your new office?
That's right. As they say, the paint was still fresh.
Right.
I'm coming up on just about 3 months now as far as law firm establishment or ownership. It's still pretty fresh, but um, like I said, like I've been telling everyone that asks, and again, to anyone that's listening or that's planning to watch, to everyone that's reached out to me or taken the time to follow up with me or to refer me a case, I sincerely appreciate it. Like I said, even at just about 3 months out, it is not a lot of time, but the past 3 months have honestly been a whirlwind. And so, like I said, I'm appreciative of all the clients who've made their way to me, who have taken their time to listen to me, more importantly, to trust me, and to any of the attorneys that have referred me a case. Like I said, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but for someone who's in my position that's just starting out, it means more than most. Unless you've ever been in this situation,
Right.
you probably don't realize how much that means to someone. So, thank you.
It comes across, trust me, and it's just the dedication and leadership that you have and your work ethic is what brings all this greatness to you.
And again, I don't. Appreciate you saying that, but it's like I tell everyone. I've been having a lot of conversations and kind of trying to generate conversations with other attorneys and people that work in this space about how referrals work, because it's something that if you work in the personal injury space or as an attorney at all, you've probably heard the term referral. You have a general idea of what people are referring to, but I've had so many people ask me, how do you get those referrals? How do you build those relationships? And the thing that I tell everyone is unless you're out there taking the time to meet other attorneys, unless you're out here doing good work for the clients that are trusting you and for the people that have hired you, all of that speaks for itself. If you're not doing those things, then it's kind of hard to understand how for someone who's trying to make that happen for themselves, how that really works, because you really have to be willing to put yourself out there, and not just in terms of meeting other people, but to make sure that you're doing good work, whether it's filing a lawsuit, making sure that you're taking the time to prepare for depositions, get the information that you need, building connections with mediators, having someone reliable that you can go to when you have disputed liability, when you have a contentious case, when you have a case that has problems. For those of us that work on the litigation side, you're probably intimately familiar with some of those issues. There's no such thing as a perfect case. If your case is being filed on, probably have got some issues there. But the part about being an attorney that is committed to getting the best possible result for their client is directly connected to, do you know what those issues are? Do you know your case well enough? And when you have those issues, what are you doing to actively find a way to overcome them? And one of the things that I tell a lot of my clients, it's kind of funny. I've had a couple of conversations with some clients recently where their ears kind of perk up and they tell me, you keep talking about trial. You keep talking about the things that you would say to a jury, and it concerns them. And I tell them it's not necessarily surprising to me to hear that that kind of makes their ears perk up or it piques their interest, because I think there's a lot of attorneys that don't necessarily think of cases and their client situation in terms of, how am I going to present this to a jury? And if I have any advice to anyone that's out there that works in personal injury, whether you're a litigation attorney or not, I tell everyone the way that I'm building this law firm and the way that I'm building this practice is, on day one, I'm looking at, how are we going to tell this story to a jury? Nobody's got a perfect case. If you have a perfect case, it's probably not going to go to trial. It's probably going to settle without having to file a lawsuit. And so my advice to anyone that is working in the personal injury space or looking to get into, and this is not something, this is not some magic formula that I've come up with myself. I have had the opportunity to speak with and to learn from some very, very talented trial attorneys, and one of the kind of recurring themes is always is about, how are you looking at your case? Are you looking at it as, how am I going to quick flip this and make as much money as I can off of it as quickly as possible? Or are you looking at it from the perspective of, how am I going to do right by my client? So you have to kind of take those blinders off sometimes, and you have to be willing to look at it. If I had to take this case to a jury, how is the jury going to perceive this? What am I going to tell them? And so it might, I'll be honest, it's probably going to concern your clients. They're probably going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't want to take this case to trial. And that's okay. As long as you're having a conversation with them and you're helping them understand. I tell my clients, that's the way my brain has been trained to work at this point. I'm not looking at this as, how are we going to get a quick settlement for you? I'm looking at this as, how can I do the best possible job for you to make sure that you get the most, not necessarily in terms of just the most amount of money, but what a lot of clients refer to as justice. How am I gonna meet your expectations? And I view all of that through the lens of, what would I tell a jury?
That's so well said, and kind of was segueing into my next question, which was, from what I've seen and some things you've talked openly about, is that so many of your colleagues, if you will, have chosen not to build the relationship, if you will, with the client, the relationship building, the referral building, because so, and I guess there's been some examples of folks out there that, the whole joke is like, some lawyers, once they finally see a courtroom, they're like, this is what a courtroom looks like, because so many of them don't want to go to trial, either because they're afraid, they're not that skilled, but they were skilled enough to get a law degree, just not, they're just not fighters, right? And it scares them to go to trial. And these 12 men and women also, I think, kind of scares them as well. But that's what sets you apart from the pack, so to speak. I don't really consider it a lone wolf, but you are, you're out there doing what I guess you're supposed to be doing, if that makes any sense. You are doing what any great attorney and counselor is supposed to be doing for their client. Am I close on that?
You know, I think from my perspective, I think you definitely touched on something that is, it's a concern that most attorneys have, is that when you're dealing with the jury, you're dealing with the unknown. You
Hmm.
have absolutely no control over whether you're in district court and you're dealing with a 12-person jury. If you're in county court, you're dealing with this, a smaller 6-person jury, whatever it may be, whatever size jury you have. We have no control over that. Your job is to get up there and to put on the best presentation of your client's case as you possibly can, and to put yourself in a position to be able to convince those people. And I think for me, I'd be lying if I said the unknown is not a bit concerning for me. That's just, it's concerning for anyone that does this job. But at the same time, I see the unknown as part of the challenge. There's something in my head that tells me, if you give me a chance to speak to those people, and I'm not saying that it's true, but there's something in my head that tells me, if you give me the opportunity to talk to those 12 people, I am convinced that I can convince them.
That's
I, you
great.
know, that's kind of the running joke I always tell everyone, is that the part about going to trial and being in a courtroom is that those 12 people, the jury, they have no other option. Now, are they actually internalizing what you're saying? That's a separate conversation. But
Hmm.
in that moment, they have no other option other than to sit there and to listen to you. And I tell everyone, if you give me an audience, I'll put on a show. That's just kind of the way that I see it. And not to make it seem lighthearted, and not to, kind of take off some of the seriousness that's there. But, I have absolutely had some situations where I've had colleagues, and even whether it's in the context of actually being in trial or just being in front of, the judge, or actually being in court, I've had some people that have kind of come up to me afterwards, and they tell me, "Hey, that guy that I just saw in there, that was a completely different person." And I think that's kind of part of the idea, is that if you're walking into the courtroom as the person that you walk down the street as, uh, you kind of got to change that mentality. You kind of have to have that persona that takes over, that's prepared to walk into a courtroom and convince the judge and convince the jury, and make them understand that you're there and that you're passionate, but you're not there for yourself. You're there on behalf of someone else. Um, you know, don't make it too personal. Don't make it about you, but make sure that you make it clear that you're there and you have a job to do. And I think that that's kind of part of where a lot of the concern and a lot of the uncertainty that a lot of lawyers have. And the other part of it too is, law school does not prepare you to walk into a courtroom. That's the reality of it. There's so many people that walk out of law school, and if you did not have a clerkship in law school, and if you didn't have an internship, and if you didn't do the clinic, or if you were not, doing trial advocacy, a lot of those resources that are available, if you whether it's because you don't have time, you have a family, um, financial constraints, you need to work at a job that's going to help you. And I think a lot of this also goes to the type of background that you have. I went to St. Mary's Law School right down the street from where my office is today. And a lot of the demographic, a lot of the people that I went to law school with were people, when I was in law school, I had a clerkship. I would bartend on the weekends. I was on the trial team. I was on the law journal, and I'm not saying all of that because I'm out here trying to promote myself, or talk about my accomplishments. But I also want to make sure that anyone that listens to this podcast, even someone that may be a potential client, I tell people, I come from a working class background. I may be an attorney, um, but that's something that I had to work towards. A lot of the people that I help, a lot of the people that I represent, a lot of the people that live in the neighborhood that surround my office, I have a lot more in common with them than they realize. I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm not here to talk down on anyone. I'm here to help people. And so I really do my best to make sure that I have an approachable persona for when I'm talking with people, for when I'm talking with clients. But at the same time, I also make sure that when I'm having these conversations, I try to tell people, if at any point you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you feel like I've gone off on a tangent, you know, wave the flag and say, "Hey, I need you to tag me back in." Because too often that happens with me is, I'm consulting with the potential client or with the current client, and my mind is running. This could be a potential issue. This could be a potential issue, and sometimes I'll have them stop me and ask, "Why are you asking about that?" And I'll tell them, I'm not crazy. I just there's a reason why I'm asking. We'll get there. In the meantime, just please indulge me.
Mhm.
Give me as much information as you can. And I think that that's another really big part of it is that making sure, whether you come from a working class background or not, at the end of the day, your job is to represent people. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us that have a license, that are in a position to help people, to make sure that you're putting yourself out there as someone who's open to having people approach you, to have people be willing to ask you questions. Make it a safe space for your clients. I've had clients that I've represented or that I've helped, and that they've told me, "Hey, you know what? You're I've dealt with so many other attorneys, or I fired this law firm, and we hired your law firm, or whatever it may be." And a lot of times I hear is, "You're actually the first person that has taken the time to kind of sit down and hear me out and ask me what's going on and ask for my perspective." And I guess maybe that's another. I'm not here trying to give away all my secrets, because they're not secrets. But just make sure that you're taking the time to hear your clients out and to hear their perspectives. I guarantee you, the number one thing that I have heard consistently throughout my practice of law is, people just want to be heard. They just want to
Right.
feel like someone took the time to listen to them. And it's not even necessarily about having an answer or about having a response. Just giving someone that has trusted you, whether you're working for a firm or you're working for yourself, give people a space to feel comfortable expressing themselves. And
Yep.
you would be surprised about how that type of relationship can blossom and put the client in a position to be able to help you, because whether you're responding to written discovery or whether you're prepping a client for a deposition, someone that does not feel like they're comfortable with you, it's going to make that process adversarial. And at that point, the client feels like they're dealing with an attorney that they're not comfortable interacting with. And then they have to walk into a deposition and deal with someone who was actively working against them. And at that point, how else is the client going to feel other than like everyone is against them? They've been injured, whether it's a car wreck, another driver, a business, whatever it may be. Do as much as you can to make the process feel less adversarial. Do what you can to help these clients understand that they're in a safe space and that they can trust you. And you'd be surprised the kind of dynamic shift that you can have in these types of situations, as long as you're willing, and at the same time be a little bit vulnerable. Make sure that these clients know something about you. Let them let them in, let them understand. And that's kind of something that again, relating back to going to trial and dealing with juries. When you're conducting a voir dire, you're walking into a room to select a jury with a panel of somewhere between probably 30 to potentially 60 people, of complete strangers. And you're in there to get to know these people and to get them to open up. These people are not going to open up. They're not going to be honest with you. They're not going to be sincere with you unless you've shown a little bit of vulnerability. So every time I walk into a courtroom to pick a jury, and again, it's not about making it about me, but it's about kind of bringing bringing the energy in the room down. This is who I am. This is who I represent. Let's not talk about the case. Let me tell you about me. I'm going to share a little bit about myself, because I'm going to ask that you share a little bit with me about yourselves. And you'd be shocked how that little bit of vulnerability can really shift the dynamic. And that translates from dealing with the jury to dealing with the client that you have sitting at the desk across from you. Don't be so high. And there's probably some people who are going to watch this that are going to say, this is pretty rich coming from me. But if you were to see me sitting with my clients, um, you know, I give my clients access to a very different version of the person that I portray. And so that's kind of a little bit of perspective about that, and how I feel about that.
I I totally agree with you on that, because if these 12 men and women see that you're not trying to, it's not an exercise in smoke, in other words, right?
Right.
You're there to tell them something that's very important about yourself and your client. And if they think, yeah, this guy just, he's all full of himself or what have, they're going to shut down. Let's be
Right.
honest. They're not going to listen to a thing you're saying. So that's important. And I think that goes hand in hand with who you are. It's that confidence you have in knowing that you're in this for the right reasons. And everybody talks about the excitement of betting on yourself, right? But you're on your own now, so to speak. It doesn't mean just because you're on your own now that you're going to change who you are. This is who David Farias is and always has been. What was the scariest part about betting on yourself through all of this?
I mean, I would say for me, probably the biggest thing is that it kind of felt like something that I was always building towards,
Hmm.
and it became a matter of, when is the right time to do it. Well, you know it's kind of one of those cliche things, is, you can plan forever, but if you do that, you're probably never going to do it. And I did not want that to turn into one of those types of situations, but more importantly, I think without realizing it from the very inception of my career, I had one thing in mind, and that was that I wanted to be litigating, and I wanted to be in a courtroom. And that's one of the things that I tell people, especially nowadays. You can go to law school and you can get your JD and you can get licensed or not get licensed, and
Hmm.
there's any number of things that you can do with that degree. You know, I recently connected with someone from an attorney that I had the opportunity to meet from Colorado, who went to a very amazing, very prestigious law school, and just decided, hey, you know what? I'm never going to get licensed, and is working in the nonprofit sector.
Wow.
And so there's just so many things that you can do um, if you decide to go, the law school route. But for me, it was never a question of, do I want to be in a courtroom? Do I want to be a litigator?
Hmm.
Uh, one of the things that this is kind of always in the back of my mind. I know in terms of, people talking about legal movies, everybody talks about Legally Blonde. That's like the gold standard. But one of the quotes that always rings in my head is from a '90s classic from Clueless, when Cher's talking about her dad, and she's like, "Daddy's a litigator." He says litigators are the scariest kind of attorneys. Like, I literally remember that line from that movie since I was a kid, and it's, for me, it's not about being the scariest kind of lawyer. It's really not. But that kind of just always like echoes in my mind. There was never a question of whether what I wanted to do, and it was being a litigator. And so I positioned myself from the very beginning. I had an opportunity to go work with the law firm, and I interviewed with them multiple rounds, and I was like very clear. I wanted to get into the litigation department, and it was like, like, we'll consider it, but not quite that. And they had a briefing role as well, as a briefing attorney, and I had worked on some appeals, and I'd actually worked on a writ of cert to the United States Supreme Court. And so I was like, oh yeah, like I'm a shoe in for this. And they were kind of like even still trying to push me away from that. And the firm that I was clerking with at the time, um, I got my bar results, and they didn't know I was interviewing around, but because they hadn't offered me a job yet. And so I made it very clear to them that I wanted to litigate right away, and they were like, no questions asked. We'll let you start litigating right away. And that kind of just kicked things off for me. And so since day one of me being licensed, I jumped into the crosshairs of litigating. And I wasn't the only, newly licensed attorney that was kind of put in that same position. And I understood in that moment why it's not for everybody and why some of the people that I was working with kind of chose to walk away from it. But for me, it kept me engaged. And then I ended up moving to Austin, and the firm that I was with in Austin for a long time, they had a litigation attorney role open. And at that point, I had only been litigating for about a year. And I met with them, and they they were like, "Hey, if you come work here, we will let you continue to keep litigating." And I never really looked back at it, but in being in a situation where I was given the opportunities to do that, I was kind of building this skill set, not and again, not purposely, but I finally got to the point and it came time where I kind of realized like, well, there's the pre-litigation side, which I always tell everyone, no offense to my colleagues on the pre-litigation side. I respect them and the work that they do, but it's not for me. And so I at some point I realized I have the skills. I know how to file a lawsuit. I've picked a jury. I've gone taken a case to a verdict. I've beaten motions for summary judgment. I've written appeals. I have an appeal that was affirmed. That a brief that I wrote that was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Texas. I was kind of just chugging my way along and kind of picking up all these little skills along the way. And that kind of segues into, I know you were asking a little bit about how things have been going for me recently. And one of the most surprising parts about law firm ownership for me, and not to change topics, too abruptly, but I'll keep it all connected, is more importantly is the fact that I've put myself out there and being willing to bet on myself, like you mentioned. Um, I don't know, m- maybe I've just done a good job of convincing other attorneys that I knew what I was doing, or maybe the competence is there. I don't know, but this much I do know, and it's that I was repeatedly given opportunities by other people. And because of those opportunities, I was able to take cases to trial, and I was able to, respond to motions for summary judgment and respond to briefs that went up to appeal to the Texas State Supreme Court and any number of different things. I had people that were willing to give me the chance to kind of put myself out there. And there's been some successes along the way, and there was definitely some losses along the way, but at the end of the day, I kind of collected all these skills, and more so in the past month or so, I've had some interactions and some now clients that have come to me that have told me, "Hey, this person told me to reach out to you. This law firm told me to reach out to you," and it's people with issues that are very much outside of the personal injury realm, but that they have issues or problems that they're like, "Hey, I've got this very unique issue. Have you ever dealt with a restricted appeal before? Do you know what a bill of review is?" Kind of these very nuanced type of procedural things that, hey, a lot of lawyers just don't know about some of this stuff. And it's nothing against anyone, but unless you're out there kind of dealing with these very nuanced issues, I totally get how some lawyers never come across some of this stuff, and especially if you don't work on the litigation side. And it's one thing to be a litigator, it's one thing to be a trial attorney, but when you start talking about things on the appellate side, those are lines some lawyers just don't cross.
Yeah.
And so I've had more recently, some inquiries from potential clients reaching out to me about very nuanced, kind of specialized, not everyday legal issues. And they'll tell me, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I know what you're talking about. I've dealt with that." And they're just like, I called 4 other lawyers and everyone has told me they have no idea what I'm talking about. And so I think part of betting on yourself is one, you have to have the confidence. Um, you know, Being a confident person has nothing to do. with me being a lawyer. If anything, becoming a lawyer probably hurt my self confidence a little bit. I tell everybody it's a very humbling process to become an attorney. But as I've had the opportunity to meet with, like I said, more so people that are dealing with issues outside of the personal injury realm, um, it has really kind of opened my eyes to, there's a market out here where, everyone doesn't have, and I can tell you, if you have $750 an hour to pay an attorney, yes, you will find someone who has dealt with a ton of restricted appeals or who have filed a bill of review or know the procedural devices that go into dealing with that. But a lot of the people here in San Antonio and in this community don't have that kind of money.
Right.
And that does not mean that some of these people are dealing with issues or situations where these issues are still relevant. They still come up. It's just they don't have the money to go pay 500 or 700 or $1,000 an hour to hire someone who's super experienced in these very nuanced areas. And so I think for me, the biggest eye opener for me is that I have surprisingly taken a little bit of a shift away from the personal injury stuff. It's probably pretty shocking to hear, because I tell everyone, I'm a plaintiff's lawyer through and through. They call me a Kool-Aid drinker. That's fine. But I've taken a little bit of a shift of away from some of the personal injury stuff, but the work is still there. It's still very fulfilling, and so the unexpected part of starting this and kind of like you said, betting on myself is that uh, the reassurance it's not built in, trust me. But I've been very fortunate enough to have these experiences and to be able to talk to some potential clients and to some individuals who have become clients where the affirmations are kind of very slowly happening. And so, as each month goes by, I feel a little bit more and more reassured that um, taking the leap and making that choice, it was not an easy one, but it feels a little bit more like the right choice every single day.
And so many other people apparently agree with you and agree with what, at least what we know to be true already. You are now on the coveted list of the National Trial Lawyers Top 40 Under 40. Congratulations to that as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was honestly something that was uh, very much unexpected. And and because I'm that kind of a person, I still don't know who the attorney or attorneys that nominated me were, because that's not something that you can apply for. That's not something that you can just pay for.
Right.
It comes through peer nominations, but I'm still trying to figure out who it was that submitted me for that because I'm a firm believer in thanking people. And trust me, I have sent a number of texts to a number of individuals trying to figure it out. No one has admitted to it yet, but you know that is like I said, something that was very much unexpected, but at the same time, that's also very, very much appreciated. I don't take any type of recognition or award or anything like that for granted. Um, you know, that's what I tell everyone is I don't do the work that I do because I like getting accolades or because I like getting awards. Um, I believe first and foremost in doing the best possible job for my clients, and whatever comes from that, I will accept it. But if I'm not doing right by my clients first, then none of these awards or accolades or nominations really mean anything if the people that I'm here to serve or don't walk away happy.
That's just who you are. That's how you're made up. And, like you were saying earlier, that a lot of folks here in in certain communities, I'll say that these folks are having some nuanced legal issues, right? That not everybody's going to know about. And that got me thinking, like, then you started mentioning, the hourly price on some of these lawyers, right? They would know about these things. But it's like some of these folks in our communities are they have legal problems that they can't afford. Does that make sense at all? uh,
Absolutely.
Especially like nuanced issues. It doesn't mean that their case or their situation's any less valuable than someone who has that kind of money. It's just I feel bad for these folks. I mean, honestly, and I think that's where great trial attorneys such as yourself come in.
Before this, I was having lunch with a colleague, and we were having a conversation. And one of the things that we were discussing is that I wholeheartedly respect anyone who is dedicated to their practice area. If it's family law, if it's criminal, if it's personal injury, if it's, civil rights litigation, if it's transactional work, whatever it
Mhm.
may be. I respect people wanting to be dedicated to their practice area and perfecting their craft. But at the same time, um, something else that I think is important is that there's a lot of lawyers that will just right out the gate. They're going to turn a potential client away. You would be surprised some of the people that you could help if you were willing to take 30 minutes or 45 minutes or even an hour of your time to do a little bit of research and figure out how you might be able to help someone and figure out what they can not everyone has to do this. I'm not here to be preachy.
Right. No,
I'm not
I
here
get
to
that.
tell other people what they need to be doing with their time. But from my personal perspective and the some of the interactions I've had with people in the past couple of months have genuinely taught me uh, there's people that are in need of help. And there's probably some attorneys out there that are in a position to help some of these people. And if you're running a successful practice, and if you're settling these PI cases, and if you're making decent money, you probably have the time and the resources to take a little bit of your time to learn about something that maybe you're not super familiar with, but you can learn about it, and it's going to take you a little bit of time. And sometimes, I've had people that are not in a position to pay approach me and tell me it is very important to me, whatever it is that I can afford to pay you, that I give you something, because I will not allow you to help me and for you to go and pay for your services. And so that's the only thing that I would mention in terms of that is, there really are there's a space for some of us, whether we're doing personal injury or something else, to take a moment and maybe really be able to help some of these people that are out here. And the reason why, you know, there's always a lot of buzz or conversation around people who call themselves trial lawyers. Well, how many trials have you tried? How many times have you been in front of a jury? Do you actually file lawsuits? Whatever. Because lawyers are constantly always criticizing one another. The thing that I tell everyone is at this point, my goal and my priority is for my colleagues and for potential clients and current clients to perceive me as a trial attorney first and as a personal injury attorney second. And that one of the things that I was probably not being super honest with myself about when I started this journey as a law firm owner in my own law firm was the fact that part of the reason why I did this is because um, I love being a plaintiff's lawyer. I love helping injured people. That's something I'm really passionate about. But the past couple of months have taught me that there's so many other ways that I can help people. And as this journey continues for me, I envision that that's going to continue. It's going to continue to trend that way. And so I'm excited to see where this journey in law firm ownership takes me in the next couple of months. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I have been telling people I don't kind of portray myself as being a trial lawyer or call myself that because I enjoy doing it. It's really not about that. that's where my dedication is at this point. Whether it's a personal injury case, um, or maybe, and I've even talked to some people. You ever need help with the criminal case? Call me. I will
Mhm.
try a criminal case. I have a couple of pending inquiries at the moment to help with some other uh, civil trial matters that are outside of personal injury. And my sincere hope is that those inquiries will continue to come my way, because if it's in criminal, whether it's in civil, whatever it may be, if it's in state court, whether it's municipal court, um, which I'd never been in municipal or justice of the peace court until the past couple of months. You know, that's what I'm telling you. That's my commitment. If you're in federal court or if you're down in JP, um, at this point, my focus is on continuing to find ways for me and my law firm to be able to help people, and that makes me really excited. That makes me really excited, and I'm really anxious to see what continues to come my way and how many other colleagues I might have out here, whether it's in the personal injury space or in something else that would be willing to give me an opportunity and a chance to collaborate with them.
That is so profound because I'm reading between the lines on all this because I think there's even though you're a great trial attorney, trial lawyer, I think there's so much more to you than that, and that's going to be coming up in the future for you. So you mentioned earlier on how all the wonderful things that you can do to help folks or be a service to others or the community, the world, if you will, just by having your JD. But then if you go further and all the experience you have as a trial attorney, a damn good one, I'll say. There's no end to what you can do with that to help to be in service of others. You know what I mean? To
Right,
help make a true difference. You'll always be known for making a difference in the courtroom. That's already a given. It's what you know what you do outside of that, right? In the world to really, because like you were saying earlier, the ones that can do it and have been pretty decently blessed in their firms or PI or what have you, they do have the time to help others. They just choose not to. But if they would just, man, they'd never know the happiness that they would feel unless they try it, of just changing someone's whole trajectory of life. They may be going to them as a last ditch effort to ask, hey, this is going on with me and these legal circumstances. Can you please give me some advice on it? And you just shut that person down. I
right,
mean, who knows if you had just been taking 5 minutes at least to talk with him, that could have changed his whole life or way of looking at things. Maybe this guy, he's thinking that, there is no more hope. I'm screwed here. And all he needs is someone who knows the law to say, hey, you know what? All is not lost here. And there's plenty of hope here, by the way.
right. And to touch on that a little bit is, I think one of the other side of being able to put yourself out there and open up and being open to helping people that need it at the same time too is, in the same kind of thought process, is knowing when to tell people, hey, you don't need a lawyer. This is a situation where, oddly enough, I've had a couple of inquiries recently where someone's like, I want to sue this person, I want to do XYZ, I want to take it to JP court or small claims court and whatever. And I told them, hey, you know what? Rarely, if ever, do I tell someone to call their insurance company and ask them for help. And it's usually related to property damage matters. But I
Mhm.
tell them, if you call your insurance company, the money that you could probably pay me out of your own pocket to file a lawsuit, pay that towards your deductible, tell your insurance company what happened, and they will go and they will sue this person to get their money back. Know when to give people advice and say, hey, you
Wow.
know what? You know what? I could take your money, or I could give you some really great advice that's still going to cost you some money, but to where your problem will get resolved and you'll probably get your money back, and I don't have to take anything from you. Because trust me, in the same theme of, be willing to help people and be willing to put yourself out there. There's some lawyers that are willing to, take people's money first and ask questions later. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important that not only being open and willing to help people, but also know when to counsel someone and tell them, hey, I get that you're already in a tough spot. Instead of costing you more money and more time, let me give you the path of least resistance. And is this going to take money out of my pocket? And is this going to mean that we don't get to work together? Probably. But I would rather set someone down a path that's going to have the best possible outcome for them and me not have to charge them money versus taking something from someone. Because at the end of the day, I really think that when those people, they might have to figure their issue out. You can advise them and they're probably going to have to figure it out on their own.
Hmm.
But at some point, I'm going to have crossed paths with enough of these people that someone is going to say, hey, when I needed help, I reached out to this guy. And instead of taking my money, he told me what I could do to help myself. Maybe you should reach out to him too. Maybe he can help you too. And that's the kind of approach that I'm trying to take. If I don't need to take from someone, I won't. But if I can help you, not only am I not going to charge you for my time or for my thoughts, I will give you the whatever access to information I have that costs me nothing. I'll share that with you. I'll share that with anyone. But more importantly, my hope is that those people will walk away from, a positive interaction. And maybe on down the line, when they need a lawyer or someone that they know needs a lawyer, maybe they'll remember me and maybe they'll call back and maybe we'll cross paths again.
Hmm. Yeah, that's almost a guarantee right there. That's what I'm saying. That's the awesome sauce that you have that so many of your other colleagues could have as well. And I'm telling you, and I touched on it a little bit, but I feel that, you know, unless you have that kind of mindset, I don't think you can truly be happy and truly happy in doing what you're supposed to be doing there in your line of work, in your arena of law, and the gifts that God gave you to help others, right? To counsel others. So listen, we've definitely talked about the wonderful man you are in law. Uh, Recently, I saw and also read up on some family lineage that got a, I hope I don't butcher this, the Bexar County Commissioner's Court proclamation for the contributions your family has made in Tejano music. Am I totally butchering that?
No, no, that was actually just this week, as a matter of fact, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So,
Mhm.
I tell everyone there's people that know the attorney David Farias, and there's people that know my uncle and my godfather, which is the accordion player David Farias.
Mhm.
So I come from a family of Tejano musicians.
Mhm.
My dad, his brothers, uh, growing up, since they were kids, they were all Tejano musicians. That's actually how my parents met, was because my mom grew up going to the Valle with my grandparents.
Mhm.
And that's how my mom and dad met, and my uncle David and my late Aunt Becky. She's no longer with us, but my mom and my Aunt
I'm sorry to
Becky,
hear that.
thank you, I appreciate it. My mom and my Aunt Becky grew up on the same street. My my grandmother Aurelia and my tia Esther, or my great tia Esther, I should say, that was my Aunt Becky's mother. Their houses are on this next door to till this day they're still next door to each other. And so my mom and my Aunt Becky grew up very, very close. They grew up on the same
Mhm.
street. They
Yeah.
went to school together. And so that's how they met my dad and my uncle David. And they both ended up getting married. And so my uncle David, he does not have any sons. So I'm his nephew, but he's my godfather, and I'm his namesake. And I don't play the accordion, but out of my dad and he has all their brothers, they played an instrument at one point. Um, Back in the 90s, my dad actually took over managing the group. So he got away from actually performing and took over management of the group. And when my dad was the manager of the group, that's when they were signed with EMI Latin. It was the same record label that Selena was signed with, Emilio Navaira. They had a national sponsorship through Anheuser-Busch. They had a commercial on Univision. My uncle David, he has a Grammy. He has an American Grammy, not a Latin Grammy. He was the second to last Tejano artist to win an American Grammy before they merged all of the Grammy categories. But they have Billboard Awards, Pura Vida Awards, Tejano Music Awards. I mention all of that because Tejano music is something I grew up with it.
Mhm.
It's literally in my blood. And so
Me
it just
too.
kind of it kind of gets a bad rap. People talk about Tejano's dead, nobody cares about it. And that's why I think it's so important that we have a community here in San Antonio, like, the Commissioner's Court and the Bexar County Clerk, that are willing to take steps to make sure that we're preserving that legacy.
Yep.
Because that proclamation was not just about my Uncle David and my Uncle Joe Farias. They also honored the Aguilares, they honored the Navairas, they honored Elsa Garcia, they honored Henry Zimmerly. They really took an approach to this proclamation, and they honored some of the not household names, some of the real pioneers.
Mhm.
And you made a mistake by bringing all this up, because not only is it something that I have personal knowledge of, but when I was in college, I wrote extensively about Tejano music. So I got my bachelor's from UTSA in history, but I didn't do a teaching certification. I didn't do any of that. I have a degree in just straight history. And so I took all these courses where I was literally allowed. They were themed courses. They were mostly centered around Texas history, border history, that kind of Mexican American history, Chicano history, and it was on purpose because it let me write about Tejano music. It let me write about my family, and oddly enough, like I said, I come from a family of musicians. Out of all the Farias cousins, grandkids, there's a couple of us that have the music bug in them, but I'd always been kind of a little bit of a musician. I've never taken it super seriously. But I know how to play the guitar. I was trained on piano for a while. I used to take classical voice lessons. I was a music major for a very, very short period of time in my college career, and I absolutely hated it. Music theory is nothing but math. I don't do math. I always had this idea that I love music, and I'm a performer myself, hence the affinity for being in front of a jury. But I picked up mariachi music in high school when I was at Brackenridge High School, and I got into the mariachi program, and I did that for a while. And then when I was at Palo Alto College, I was in the mariachi program
Mhm.
with Juan Ortiz, the director of
Yeah.
Campanas de America.
Yeah.
He actually trained me. I took, I was a voice student of his. He was giving me voice lessons. He was formerly trained by a classically trained Italian tenor. He's an incredibly talented musician and singer,
Yeah.
and I am very fortunate that I had the opportunity to work with him and to learn from him. And so, the kind of performing aspect of it was always very important to me, because I was always very well aware of who my uncles and who my family were, that I kind of take a path that let me divert. Not that I don't love Tejano music,
Mhm.
but I was always very adamant. I'm not here to ride my family's coattails, and so that's how I got involved in mariachi music. And so Juan Ortiz was actually given the proclamation as well, so I had the opportunity to speak with him
Oh,
after they did the
great.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak with him after the presentation. And just to see the city and the county take some time to honor, not just my uncles and my family, but
Mhm.
someone like Juan Ortiz, some of the more unknown, like I told you, like more pioneers like the Aguilares, like Henry Zimmerly. Those are names that I all know, but maybe not everyone else. But for me, the thought and the sentiment behind some of those people that they honored was a true testament to the impact that a lot of people that like Tejano music and that grew up around it, that don't necessarily understand, who some of these pioneers were. We lost Flaco Jimenez last year,
Right.
but like even Flaco's father, artists from the valley like Narciso Martinez, the real true pioneers, and even the people who understand, there's conjunto music, which evolved into Tejano music. There's norteño music, you have orchestra music, kind of how all of these ideas really interplayed. A lot of people don't know, as Tejanos and Chicanos were experiencing, financial success and financial growth. That's how orchestra music became about, because the conjunto, the more traditional stuff, it was seen as working class. The emerging middle class was trying to separate themselves. And that's how you had, the explosion of like the more orchestra type genre, like the big band Tejano type sounding. And so it's all tied into who we are as Tejanos, people who grew up here. And that's what I tell everyone too. Sometimes people kind of ask me, you talk a lot about being a Tejano. It's in my bio, it's on my Instagram profile. And a lot of people really don't get that. And that's the thing that I tell people is like, it's not about Tex-Mex food. It's not about not wanting to be Mexican. We are our own people. And if you want to learn about it, there's a history out there about it, and how these people evolved and how they kind of grew, because there was a part of it where it was about, they didn't want, Tejanos kind of integrating into mainstream society. So they kind of had to create avenues for themselves. And the part that's really interesting to me about that is that it's a story that can be told through music. And
Mhm.
that's really a lot of what I wrote about when I was an undergrad, about kind of how, if you look at how the history of Tejanos kind of evolved over time, that's a story that can be told directly through music.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that's wonderful. And I think it's very beautiful. And
Yep.
thankfully, like you mentioned, that's a part of my family history.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say anymore because we could probably do a whole separate
We
podcast.
we can.
If you want to talk about music and if you want to talk about history, I can go for hours.
Okay. As you just mentioned, we can go on for a couple of more hours on this because I'm literally like a sponge when you're talking. I'm like just absorbing everything. It's so fascinating, man. You're a very fascinating person, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I know you're busy, so it really means the world to us here. That you took a little bit of that time and spent it with us today to educate us, number one, and just to be kind. You're always the consummate professional, and we love having you on, and we're going to keep having you on. David, please tell folks how they can reach you if they ever find themselves in any kind of legal situation, and even if they have a legal question and there's an area that you can't help them in, you know somebody that can help them. So tell them how they can reach you.
Absolutely. You can reach me through fariastriallaw.com. You can also reach me through my Instagram page, either at El Abogado de Texas or Farias Trial Law, the same Instagram name. And you can also reach me at 210-740-0223. That is my office number, or you can reach me directly at dfarias@fariastriallaw.com. I sincerely mean it. If you have an issue, if you have a problem, and you don't know where else to turn, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. That is not a promise or a guarantee that I can help you, but
Mhm.
if I can do anything to point you in the right direction, or to one of my wonderful colleagues who can help you, by all means. don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here. I came back to San Antonio to be here for my community. I look forward to having additional opportunities to stay connected with the wonderful people here in San Antonio. And I look forward to getting to interact and meet many more of y'all. Again, Esteban, I appreciate the invite and I look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. Trust me on that. Ladies and gentlemen, David Farias. David, I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience real quick, and I'll be right back with you.
Sounds good.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful David Farias with the Farias Law Firm. Folks, he is the real deal. So give him a call if you ever find yourself in need of expert legal advice or help. He will be there to help you. Folks, there's a lot of doom and gloom going on in the world today. All over the news, you're seeing it, social media, and now even on the streets as you're walking by. Do yourselves a favor. Get out there and love somebody today. I will see y'all up the road. I love y'all. I will forever. Bye.